What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Random Video Blog, where every single Friday I, Graham G.S. Matthews, run down my rambling wrestling thoughts, share a few stories, etc., etc. And here today I'm doing another book review. Now, if you haven't already checked them out, be sure to check out my past book reviews of Daniel Bryan's book, Chris Jericho's latest book, or his third book I did a book review of last year. His fourth book I actually did a written review of for nextdaywrestling.net last month. I've also talked about Austin Aries' book, the WWE Book of Rules, AJ Lee's book, Ryback's book, and maybe one other I'm forgetting right now. But I've done a lot of book reviews this year. I'm doing a lot more reading in the past few months than I have in quite a long time. The NXT book, so I'm trying to read at least one book a month, and it's not like fucking like Hamlet or some shit like that. It's always wrestling autobiographies, just because that's what interests me. And of course, the latest wrestling autobiography that I talked about a few weeks ago, I think at the end of the Daniel Bryan book review, is that I read Pat Patterson's Accepted, How the First Gay Superstar Changed WWE. I got this as a gift for Easter from my parents, my mother to be exact, to be specific, back in March or April, I think April, whenever Easter was this year. And I've had it sitting on the side for a while now. I wanted to read the NXT book, then Austin Aries'. I wanted to finish Daniel Bryan's. So this was still on the list. I was very excited to start reading it. I think I actually asked for it for Christmas last year. I didn't get it, and I was going to get it eventually. I was going to buy it for myself eventually, and I didn't until I got it for Easter. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not too long of a read. It's just about 250, 60 pages, so it's not incredibly long. But it's a really interesting tale. Now, if you're like, oh man, I don't like the old timers, I think it's probably really boring, I don't want to read it, then you could not be any more wrong. Pat Patterson is one of the biggest geniuses this fucking industry has ever seen. Pat Patterson is a godsend to pro wrestling. So the stories that he has to share in here, in addition to being gay, I mean, obviously the title is called Accepted, and he talks about how, and there's a lot of like mentions to how being gay has changed wrestling for Pat Patterson, and now he didn't publicly come out or speak out until just Legends House a few years ago, which it was taped in 2012. It didn't air until 2014. And it's also timely, too, because I think the other day was like National Coming Out Day or something, so I guess it's timely I review this book. And he talks about that and how people perceived him or didn't perceive him and stuff like that. Really, really interesting stuff. So the first half of the book, I would say, is mostly background, him growing up in Montreal. And it's a very inspirational story, too, because his family, he lived in a really, really big family, like 8 or 9, 10 kids, a lot of kids. I forgot what the exact number was. But he lived in a family with a lot of kids in a very, very small house. He would have to sleep in like the fucking broom closet. Like that's how small this house was and how big that family was. So eventually it came to a point, and his mother was very loving, his father not so much. And he did later love his father, later on in life, but they were never tremendously close, and he does cite that as one of his regrets. And I don't want to spoil the whole book. I'm just kind of giving you a basic background here of what it's about. But he goes from Montreal to Boston on his own, like a fucking Greyhound, with $20 in his pocket, nothing else. And he made a life for himself there. He just knew from the get-go, and this is what I really admired about Pat Patterson's story, was that he said from the very beginning he knew he didn't want to be just another person. He knew he wanted to perform in front of an audience, and he still does that to this day in the form of karaoke and stuff like that. But he did not want to be like everyone else who he grew up with in Montreal. He didn't want to go to a factory and just be just another number, a lot like his father and maybe his mother too. He wanted to be somebody. So he took that to heart, ended up going to Boston, started a wrestling career for himself there, training under Killer Kowalski and a few others. Maurice Vachon, he's very complimentary of. Mad Dog, Maurice Vachon, Killer Kowalski, and a few others. Roy Shire from the California area, which is really where he got his big break. He talks a lot about his tag team with Ray Stevens and their classic tag team from that time period many decades ago. He talks about going from territory to territory, playing all these different characters, changing his name from, what was his, Pierre Clement, I think his actual name was, before he changed it legally, I think, to Pat Patterson. So that is his actual name at this point, but it wasn't always Pat Patterson. Then he spends pretty much the second half of the book talking about his time in WWE. First as a wrestler, he doesn't spend as much time on certain stuff as you think he would. He kind of breezes by the fact that he was the first Intercontinental Champion. And it's funny because he makes a joke about how he didn't actually win the championship in Rio de Janeiro. He just, I guess, had found out that he had won the championship there, and they just kind of made that up, that he won a tournament in Rio de Janeiro. But he is cited as being the first IC champion, which he was champion. I just don't think he won the championship in a tournament at Rio de Janeiro based on how he talks about it there. He also doesn't spend a ton of time on the Stooges stuff. So if you're a big Stooges fan, he actually admits he wasn't a fan of it at all. He didn't want to do the Stooges stuff. He thought it was really dumb. He would rather play a more serious character. He wishes he was around in the 90s to be a main event player then and work with the likes of Hulk Hogan and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H and so many others. He feel like he could have fit in that time period very nicely, which I do agree with. But yeah, he doesn't really spend a lot of time on the Stooges stuff just because he wasn't a big fan of that time period in his career. But what he does spend a lot of time on is talking about being an influence backstage, a creative consultant to Vince McMahon and their relationship, both senior and junior, in the 80s and in the 90s, being there for the Montreal Screwjob, starting the Royal Rumble, being there for the first WrestleMania, watching recent WrestleManias from the crowd and like crying about it because he remembers being there for the very first one, going into the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. It's a really, really great book, in my opinion. He covers a lot of ground, both from his personal life, again, like I said, being gay, which I haven't talked about in the last few minutes because it really isn't like, oh my God, this is my gay story, how I came out. No, it's about the life of Pat Patterson and how he is absolutely right with the title, how the first gay superstar changed WWE. And not only WWE, but pro wrestling. Very few people gave him shit for being gay. Most people didn't even know he was gay. A lot of people already knew by that point, by the 70s, 80s, whatever. He does have like a few gripes with certain people. He doesn't name them by name, but he kind of gets certain things off his chest in this book saying, no, that didn't happen. And he kind of, writes off certain rumors about him and stuff like that. So this was kind of his platform to address certain situations from the past number of decades that may or may not be true according to Patterson or not true. So again, you'll have to read the book to know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's a great read. His writing style is good. He doesn't have the most perfect English. If you've ever heard a Pat Patterson interview or a promo, he says the crowd's going to go nut or they're going to go banana. He doesn't say bananas or he doesn't say nuts. He says nut and banana. And he talks about his close relationship with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, growing up with him, kind of serving as a mentor for The Rock in his career in Hollywood and whatnot. So it's a really, really good read. He's got a great story, a great background, a very illustrious career in pro wrestling, and still continues to be a force behind the scenes even today. And it's a relatively recent book, too. I think it just came out in 2016. So a lot of what he talks about is very up-to-date. He talks about Daniel Bryan, being a big proponent of him, and Shawn Michaels, and Bret Hart, and a few others. He debunks a few rumors about leaving WWE due to Triple H taking over, starting to take power in like 2004 or something, which was not true. He talks about leaving WWE a number of times because he was fed up with the job, but he would always come back, which is so like Vince McMahon. But yeah, it's a really, really entertaining read. So just because, he's an old timer, he has nothing interesting to say, he's going to talk about the territories too much. He really doesn't. He really doesn't. He talks a lot about his wrestling career, but all of it are funny stories. Like Pat Patterson is such a huge prankster. He actually spends an entire chapter talking about Legends House, which you didn't have to do, but it was really cool to, which is probably fitting because that was where he officially came out to the world. I mean, most people already knew he was gay by that point. John never knew. John, my good friend John Knapp, he's a big Pat Patterson fan. Never knew Pat Patterson was gay until I told him about it because he never watched Legends House. And he was like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." Everyone knew that. You didn't? He was like, "No, not really." And that just goes to show that him being gay had nothing to do with the impact that he had in WWE. Of course, he changed WWE. But he's talking about in the title, like how the first gay superstar changed WWE. It wasn't because he was gay that he changed WWE. Obviously, perceptions and stuff like that, and how it shouldn't matter whether you're gay, straight, black, white, or whatever, male, female. That was just kind of a title for him. He was the first, not open gay superstar, but one of the first gay superstars, wrestlers in WWE. But he changed WWE, gay or not, black or white, male, female. He changed WWE for the better with creating the Royal Rumble, being the first IC champion, and all the other things he talks about in this book that were not common knowledge before it came out. It's a fascinating read. I could not recommend it enough. Check it out at your local bookstore or on Amazon, whatever. It's Pat Patterson's Accepted, How the First Gay Superstar Changed WWE. So, really enjoyed this. Looking forward to my next book review, which might be a while because I feel like it's definitely a bigger book. I'll pull it up for you here. And I've talked about it before. No, this is Daniel Bryan's book. Where is it? God damn it. Yeah, here it is. Justin Roberts' book. Best Seat in the House, Your Backstage Pass Through My WWE Journey. So I picked this up over WrestleMania weekend or right before WrestleMania. and I'm only cracking into it now because I picked up a lot of good books this year. So I'm looking forward to reading that and reviewing that. It might be a while though. I finished Pat Patterson's book while I was waiting at the fucking like train station or the bus station last Friday, coming home from Fozzie and Mass. So I just read at the most random times, and also at work when it's dead and whatnot. So I'll probably get to Justin's book when I have the time in the next few weeks, months, or whatever. So it might not be another like in a month that I'll read or review Pat Patterson's book, or excuse me, Justin Roberts' book, but it will be up eventually right here on the channel, along with more random various video blogs. So be sure to check them out every single Friday right here on the channel by liking this video, dropping a comment, sharing the video, and also subscribing to the channel for more daily content, not just the random video blogs. But that being said, guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.